There was also a nun, a prioressa. There was also a nun, a prioress, that of her smiling was full simple and qua, who smiled very simply and modestly. Her greatest oath was but be Saint Loi. Her most popular swear was in the name of Saint Eligius. And she was cleped Madame Eglantine, and she was called Madame Eglantine, that is, Briar Rose. Full well she song the service divina, entuned in her nose full semele. She really would sing the service at Mass or at church really well, nasally, through her nose. And French she spak full far and fetisly, after the school of Stratford at Bowa, for French of Paris was to her un canawa. And she spoke French very beautifully and elegantly. After the school of Stratford at Bows, there's a note that indicates that she's speaking a certain dialect of French based in England because she doesn't know the way French is spoken in Paris. At meat, well tout was she withal. She let no morsel from her lippes fall, ne wet her fingers in her sauce deep. She was very well taught in table manners. She didn't allow any morsel of food to fall from her lips, and she never would dip her fingers too deep in her sauce. Well could she carry a morsel, and well cape, that no drop ne fell upon her breast. She could do a good job of keeping a morsel of food in her mouth so that no bits of food would drop on her breast or her chest. In Curtizia was set full much of her lest. All of her desire, or much of her desire, was based on manners, etiquette. Her overlippe weeped she so kleine, that in her cup was no farthing sign of grace when she drunken had her draught. So she would wipe her upper lip so fastidiously and carefully that if you looked into the cup from which she was drinking, there wouldn't be any specks of grease floating in it. Full semele after her mate she racht, and sickerly she was of great disport, and full plaisant and amiable of port. She would grab her meat very seemingly, elegantly, and certainly she had a very cheerful manner, very pleasant manner. She was very friendly with respect to her way, her disposition. And pined her to counterfeit chair of court, and to ben estatlich of manera, and to ben holden digne of reverence. And she took pains to imitate the manners of court, and to hold herself in a stately manner, and to be held worthy of reverence. But, for to speaking of her conscience, she was so charitable and so piteous, she would weep if she saw a moose caught in a trap, if it were dead or bled. So to turn to matters of conscience, she was so charitable and so filled with pity that she would weep if she saw a mouse caught in a mousetrap, dead or bleeding. Of smalle hoendes hadde she, that she fed with roasted flesh, or milk and wastel bread. She had small dogs, which she fed with roasted meat or milk and fine white bread. But sore wept she if one of him were dead, or if men smote it with a yard smert. and all was conscience and tendre heart. So she would sorely weep if one of them died, one of those little dogs, or if a man struck it with a sharp stick. And she was just completely filled with issues of conscience and tenderheartedness when these things happened to her pets. Full seemingly her wimple pinched was, her nose traitis, her e'en grey as glass, her mouth full small and their toes soft and red. So her wimple, her headdress, is very nicely pleated. She has a small nose. Her eyes are gray like glass. She has a small, soft, and red mouth. But, secretly, she had a fair forehead. It was almost a span broad, I trow, for hardily she was not undergrowe. But certainly she had a fair forehead. It was almost a span broad, so a span is 9 inches across, I believe. For certainly she was not undergrown, underfed. Full fettis was her cloak, as he was war. She has a very elegant cloak, I became aware, I, Geoffrey Chaucer, looking at this prioress at the Tabard Inn. Of small coral about her arm she bar a pair of beads, gowded all with grain, and thereon hang a brooch of gold full shena. So she has a rosary, which is a necklace of beads that a Catholic uses to pray, saying certain prayers, the Our Father and the Hail Mary. And it's made of small coral beads. And on it is a brooch made of shiny gold, entirely of gold, on which there was first wreat a crooned ah, and after a more winked omnia. So on this brooch, first there's written a big capital letter A that has a crown on top of it, and then after, in Latin, a more winked omnia, which means love conquers all.